Okay, Patrick, thank you so much for fighting all the battles for our entire industry. An excellent presentation and very, very informative. So thanks again. We have two more presentations. The one we're going to do now is the DAS panel. Okay, and leading that as the moderator is our good friend Terry Borders. Terry is the Executive Vice President at Verta, and Verta is a CLEC in 49 states and owns more than 4,000 poles in the row. She joined the company in 2021 to establish a tower program in the eastern half of the United States. Terry now leads the business development and sales team for all asset classes. Prior to Verta, Terry was Director of Building Solutions at American Tower, managing DAS projects nationwide. Terry had previous roles with SBA as a territory manager, Bell South Mobility, well, that was a while ago, wasn't it? All right, and Sprint PCS. Terry holds a BBA degree in marketing from Georgia Southern. She attended the Leadership Institute UNC Keenan Flagler Executive Program in 2005 and holds real estate broker licenses in several states. So let's welcome Terry Borders.
Thank you, sir. 4.
And there'll be, she'll be introducing the panel.
Everybody have a microphone? Thank you, Craig. I was hoping to get away with that without telling how long I've been in the business. If those of you that remember Bell South Mobility way before it became Singular and then AT&T. Well, thanks for sticking with us. I have thoroughly enjoyed all the panels today, especially the keynote this morning that really, if you were here for Terry Chow's, his discussion on DAS in building venues, especially around the NFL. We're going to talk a little bit about DAS and small cells. But first, I want to take a minute to introduce our panelists. I'm going to just ask them, in their words, to say a little bit about who they work for, how long they've been in the business, and how they personally intersect with DAS or small cell deployments. So Robert, why don't we start with you?
Sure, no problem. Testing 1, 2, here we go. My name is Robert Lara. I'm a licensed architect with Stantec Consulting. And I have 26 years experience in everything that has to do with telecom. So pretty much seen it all. So.
Sam?
Thank you for having me, Terry. Sam Rice, President for M Communications. We provide end-to-end DAS solution services for carriers and third-party operators. That's everything from data collection up front, feasibility review, through design, the implementation, of course, full construction, and then anything that it takes to wrap up a project, commissioning, optimization, integration. Myself, I've been in the industry probably 15 years, located in the Southeast.
Good afternoon. This is Jessica Collins. For those who don't know me, I work at a company called Bolden Networks, previously Mobility, if you're familiar with that name. I do venue sales in the Southeast, focused on the enterprise paying for the DAS versus the carriers paying for the DAS. So flipping the model a bit from what some in the room might be used to. And I'm also based in Atlanta, supporting the Southeast like Sam.
Thank you. I'm Clint Corley with Verizon Wireless. I'm a construction engineer. I've been in the industry for 17 years. On my side, I pretty much handle the deployment of ODAS, IDAS, small cell, and macro mod, so a little of everything. And I'm based out of Atlanta as well.
So we all have a panel of different aspects of, we've got the carrier, we've got the owner, infrastructure providers, and then we've got the architect that can design the network, and then we've got Sam to build it. So we can just do it all right here, right? And this is a question to all of you, so I'll start with Clint and we can work backwards. Where do you see the biggest gap in wireless coverage today? Do you think it's indoor, enterprise indoor, which is not those big stadiums, but more of the smaller buildings, public venues, or urban outdoor areas?
The biggest gap, I see it between the performance of rural and urban 5G. So when I say rural, I think about our small businesses and our farmers, because roughly 60% of rural America doesn't have access to high capacity 5G. So what that results as is you think about a farmer who's relying on low band frequencies, so that kind of limits them to where they can't really benefit from like IoT or heavy data loads with with the equipment that they use to like monitor their soil or the health and quality of their soil or their livestock in real time. Also, I'll say indoor, what you mentioned, the indoor penetration. So you have a lot of buildings out here now that have that low E tint or energy efficient glass and concrete to where 5G, that signal can penetrate that building. Also, FWA, for someone who might know fixed wireless access. So you have some, it's a little box that's heavily relying on macro towers. So with that said, that signal was vulnerable to the to the surrounding world. So it could be little things like the foliage or something that might prevent that might interfere with that signal, and then in turn affecting the customer from having home internet in their home through that box. And then finally, I would say satellite to cell. So when you think about your national parks or places where you only get emergency text, those are areas where I would say as far as gaps for coverage right now.
You said pick one. Is he cheating?
Oh, I missed pick one. I'm sorry.
Yeah. He just covered them all. So does anybody else have anything to add? Because he may have taken your answer.
Agree with Clint.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. We were just letting you go. Okay, so DAS versus small cell. So if we look at DAS, I remember being at this South Summit. It was right maybe before COVID, and I heard a carrier say DAS is dead. And if any of you were in the room, we all just went, what? What that meant was DAS is very expensive. So if we look at DAS and small cell today, do you think they're complementary solutions or are they competing approaches? What about you, Robert?
Complementary, of course. I mean, I think you need both to complement each other, right? So, and we think of venues, for example, I mean, it's a combination of both, using both.
Okay.
So I think one has to talk to the other, of course, right? So,
Yeah, I would add, we've got a good group up here that covers everything. What we don't have is an OEM. If we had some OEMs on the panel, they would probably say that they're competing, because the small cell people say they can do everything and the DAS people say no. You've got to have a comprehensive solution that's going to be able to, manage 5 carriers, et cetera. But they're definitely complementary in my mind. You have one cells that can feed DAS as a signal source. You can distribute small cells just for a simple, coverage play. So complementary.
Okay.
Agreed.
I know some RF engineers, if you're talking about ODAS, they'd probably disagree and say, no, small cell, because we get more bang for our buck. So, I normally do right-of-ways small cells in the right-of-way, or, for certain outdoor areas that carriers want to cover. And I do hear sort of that, I think it's a question later about the end of life, ODAS and what they want to do with it. So it is interesting from our perspective. How do we see 5G changing our indoor networks and designs? Clint, I'll ask you about that because you're really heavily involved in that 5G effort at Verizon.
LTE, getting LTE through well, before it used to be trying to get service coverage bars into the building. LTE would pretty much cut through a wall like a butter and knife. But now we're trying to go to higher frequencies for more capacity. So higher capacity, shorter reach. So the remedy to that, now you're seeing more small cells being deployed on multiple poles just to tighten that grid of antennas to densify the coverage. So you're seeing more of that now with designs compared to LTE.
And that just makes the business case for someone like a Bolden, because if you do want 5G in a building, you're probably going to need a dedicated signal source in that building. That's where we come in with a DAS.
Well, I'm going to get to you in a minute with that one. Who should own the in-building wireless networks? The enterprise, the carrier, or a neutral host provider?
Am I answering that, or is Clint? Or both? Our answer is probably different.
I'm going to ask Clint, being Verizon first. Who do you think should own the networks?
It just varies the location, but definitely if it's like a high tier 1 type value, like your Mercedes-Benz or Nissan Stadium, I feel the carrier should own it. The carrier should have that type of control to where they maintain the operation and maintenance and quality of service of their equipment with those type of venues. Now, if it was something like multi-tenant, where you have different people, different carriers, then probably a neutral host. But if it was like a single tenant office, mid to small office, that wanted maybe like a private network, then probably the actual enterprise, the company.
Yeah, and Jessica, if you would like to elaborate on that.
I'll give you a counter view. So if you work with a 3PO or third-party operator like a Bolden, we're going to design a network that will support all 3 carriers. So if you're not on the Verizon's network, you're going to get coverage with an AT&T or T-Mobile. So we do compete with Verizon for some of the big tier 1s, like the Nissan Stadiums out there, which they won. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So we are competitors in the space, but then we're also partners. So for some of those more tier 2 type venues where Verizon doesn't want to do that investment to put in a dedicated DAS, we can do that. And we've got signal source agreements and partnership agreements with the carriers so that we can broadcast Verizon signal. And that's where we come in.
Sam, do you see, I guess from your perspective, because you're really involved with the build-outs, do you see the traditional carrier-funded DAS models fading, or are they just evolving to like what Jessica mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely fading, but that in itself, I think, is an evolution. I think it's just whichever way the pendulum is swinging. Today, it's definitely swinging. Carriers are out saying that they want to pay less or they don't want to pay for certain things. And they've made it clear that whether it's a DAS or a macro or outdoor small cell, they want to get their customers connectivity for the least amount per megabyte, gigabyte, byte of data, whatever it is. So I think that over time, we'll get some better rules out of the carriers. That's really the question mark today, in my opinion anyway, of what they're willing to pay for and where they're not. So it's an evolution, but there's a fade there for sure.
Jessica, going back to, when we first started talking about this panel, when you told me that, yes, the enterprise building owners will pay for it, and then you go out and basically rent the signals from the carriers, which I thought was such an interesting model. So what ROI metrics are enterprises using when they're deciding where to deploy indoor and even outdoor ODAS in their infrastructure?
Yeah, so we're really targeting enterprise customers that have a large building, so a large commercial real estate building. We're talking like 500,000 plus square feet in a dense urban area where there aren't small cells penetrating the building, there aren't macros that you can throw up on the building, so they need something inside. We're also targeting like music venues and places where there's a high capacity of people for events and that kind of thing. And that is where enterprises will sometimes pay. And what our model is, as a venue-funded offering, is that network is a service to the venue. So we're really trying to educate the enterprises to think about this as a utility. So when they think about their water bill or their gas bill or their Wi-Fi bill, they've got to also think about their cellular bill. And how the enterprises pay for it and how they think about it is an ongoing education that companies like us are having to do in the space.
It has evolved because, as Craig mentioned, I didn't know it went that far back when I was at SpectraSite and we merged, or we were bought by American Tower. I was very heavily involved with the indoor space in the casinos and malls. And so I would go out and I would sell to the carriers, you've got to be in here. And then I would provide the neutral host. And the venue wasn't paying anything, but we wanted the rights to do it, which was hard enough to get back then. And then you put in maybe a passive network, and then you have to tell the carriers they're paying quite a bit to operate. So I like to see how it's evolved, because it's becoming, I think, more of it is a utility. I mean, everyone expects their phones to be used indoors, and now with AI and utilizing, what did somebody say earlier today, like your phone is your computer, you've kind of gotten away from the laptop, but then all that AI brings as well, it's going to be that you're probably going to sign up more enterprise clients. So, Robert, do you notice differences between when carriers or other infrastructure owners own the DAS versus when your client, say Verizon, owns it?
Yeah, there is some differences. I think there's special care taken either way, right? I mean, everyone's proud of their work. I think when a carrier takes it over, there's that protection of their brand reputation, right? So, not that there's more care to it, it's just that it's your name, your brand, right? So I think that adds to the play, right? So I think either way, it's, it's everyone here in the panel, of course, they're gonna take special care to work, they're proud of their work, right? So, but I've seen, folks like Verizon and T-Mobile, they're very proud of their name, right? So they're gonna take special care on that, so, yeah.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that? No?
No.
You just,
No, I was saying thank you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Especially if your sales and marketing people have gotten a hold of it, and it's, I do think the money kind of follows, what their efforts are. So if their name's on something, maybe it does make a difference. When the systems are upgraded today, because we're constantly evolving in this, 6G today, when we started talking about it on the M&A panel, I went, oh, weren't we just talking about 5G? Well, I guess that was 6 years ago, but now, here we're starting with 6G. We're constantly going to the next. So we've got all of these existing networks for DAS. Who's paying for those upgrades? To be able to get additional spectrum in, additional, radios, you're going to need more space in the venue. So who's paying for that? The carriers or the building owners or someone else, I guess? Jessica, I'm going to ask you.
As Sam said, we don't have an OEM on the panel, but a lot of OEMs say that some of these upgrades can be done over software. So the more upgrades you can have over software, the less you have to go in and rip and replace something and someone have to pay for something, because that ongoing licensing fee is probably built into whatever they're paying for that network. The way that we typically do it is we have a contract for a period of 5 to 10 years in the initial term, and then we've got some sort of evaluation of the system to see if it needs to be replaced or ripped out or some combination of that. And when we decide what needs to happen to the network, that's really when we decide who's paying for it. And it's typically a combination of us, the venue, and the carriers, depending on if they need to upgrade radios or add spectrum, that kind of thing.
Okay. And with that, when you see end-of-life networks be decommissioned, Clint, does Verizon typically continue to operate, or will they just decide to just remove the network or quit operating? Have you seen that at all?
I've seen it. We're kind of going through it now. It's think about 4G right now. It's technically our safety net. It's a soft sunset to the technology. Let me say that, because eventually, we're trying to maximize on 5G, and then, like you mentioned, 6G is going to become eventually. So with 4G, maybe, I'm just throwing numbers out here, maybe close to another decade or so. So it's slowly declining. So we're going through it now, to answer that question, so yes. Even we've seen it with CDMA being decommissioned as well too, so yeah.
I won't speak for Verizon on that, but the systems keep pumping. I mean, if y'all haven't seen an Ion B that's lit up like a Christmas tree, when you go to want to put a DAS somewhere, they pretty much leave them. Maybe not Verizon specifically, but
Okay.
the systems keep performing.
All right, interesting. All right, well, Sam, on that point, from a constructability standpoint, where do you see the most focus from the clients you support? Is it speed, budget, coverage, or future upgrades?
The old good, fast, cheap, pick two.
Yes.
I'd say, so historically, when it comes to how these deals came together, and some of them still do today, someone will go sell with the landlord and they'll say, okay, here's the contract, we agree, here's what we'll do, then we're going to go back and get the carriers. Believe it or not, there's a lot of venues out there that have contracts in place and there's no system built, there's no carrier at the table still, and over the last handful of years that those have happened, we're getting a huge emphasis on speed to market. If a contract gets signed, they're making commitments of, we'll have it in 6 months, we'll have it in 9 months. There's a variety of way that 3POs or any neutral host owner are able to get a signal source to the table that are different from the past. So speed's a big one. And then budget, we're starting to see things like, I'd say, a handful of years ago, if you were doing a DAS in a system or a small cell, you're covering the whole building. Today, you'll say, well, I've got a tenant and they only have 4 floors of this building. I want to pay for my coverage. I'm not worried about the people below me. And we're starting to see neutral host owners get more creative with what they allow and even the carriers have become more flexible in what they're allowing in the designs that they want to connect to. So I'd say huge emphasis on those. And it's not that quality is not just as important, but from our customers, from the people, the actual end users, those are the two emphasis these days.
I'll add to that a little bit. So when we do the design, again, for more of an enterprise customer, and it's a hospital or a hotel or some combination, they're like, cover the lobby, cover something where there's a lot of traffic. And if they're going to be in a room or a hallway or whatever, there's a Wi-Fi option. So there's a lot of push for common areas in some instances. And even carriers may say, yeah, we'll contribute signal source for a common area only. We're not going to do it on every floor. That's too costly. So it does depend on the enterprise customer, the size, that kind of thing.
And Robert, do you see that from a design standpoint?
Yeah. I mean, I agree.
Okay. And Robert, to you, talking about evolving networks, how do you future-proof a solution when technology keeps changing?
Yeah, it's a good question, right? Future-proof. I mean, we think future-proofing as a crystal ball, right? We're horrible with crystal balls, right? It's not, otherwise we all win the lotto, right? So it's, I think it's more about smart growth, right? I think we have to intelligently grow the system, right? And we don't want to over-design. Over-design is like taking a sledgehammer and trying to break open a walnut, right? It's as fun as that sounds, it just doesn't make sense, right? There's a lot of dollars tied to that. So I think we got to think more, I think modular, right? We think more modular, more like the Lego concept, right? You buy the pieces that you want, put it together. Legos, you can add to it, subtract to it. It's a very organic growth, right? So I think it's better to do smart growth than to try to future-proof. It's hard to tell what's 6G, when is it going to come? Who knows, right? So it's hard to tell, right?
Yeah.
So
So it sounds like you're thinking that something else will come down the line, but you're not over-engineering for it at the time.
correct, yeah.
Okay. You've also, back to you, Robert, you've designed head-ends and ODAS for Hard Rock, Raymond James, and now you're supporting the design at the Nissan Stadium, which is pretty impressive if you saw it today. It's the first smart stadium. What challenges only show up at that scale of a project?
So I think it's that question about growth, right? I mean, growth happens a lot quicker than what anyone can predict. I'll use Hard Rock, for example, right? Hard Rock, it's a stadium that when we got involved, it was designed for a Super Bowl, right? It's one of the stadiums that has one of the most Super Bowls ever attended to, right? So we got involved. When it first started, it was basically a venue designed for football. And what we don't think is that these venues are a lot more than just football, right? They're, Hard Rock, for example, they ended up throwing in a world-class tennis court and stadiums, and now they have world-class tennis competition. Well, that kind of threw a little bit of a monkey wrench, right? So now, and that's where the growth happens, right? It's not just linear thinking, oh, well, we're gonna, put up more, we're gonna have more people attend. No, it's about the different venues. It's about being able to change from tennis to football to indoor concerts to outdoor concerts, right? It's the whole, people forget about the tailgating experience.
Right.
In the parking lot, that in itself is one big party alone, right? So, and then hey, let's race cars around the parking lot. F1 came to play, right? So that kind of threw another monkey wrench to it, right? So now poles had to be moved, and new RF studies. I mean, and that's where the growth happens, right? So, and it's adding to that, call it user experience, right? Now, folks can actually use their smart glasses, use their smartphones, listen to their favorite Ferrari driver screen down, and I say that because I was there, right? So it's just so much fun. 100,000 people in one venue, all using their cell phone. It's crazy, right? So, and that's where the growth is, right? So,
Right.
Yeah.
Different experience.
Different experiences in that same venue, right? So.
Well, and Sam, how hard is it to upgrade those systems once they're live? Like, what are your challenges when you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it completely depends on the design, the OEM, and then what you're upgrading to add. So Jessica alluded earlier to software enablement that may be able to add a carrier. You've got DAS systems that you just enable an amplifier that's already out there. You add some equipment in the head-in room, and it's a very straightforward upgrade. But like take C-band as an example, and future-proofing networks. Like if we didn't know, you couldn't have future-proofed for C-band. Today, if you go put C-band on a system that doesn't have it, it's a complete passive overhaul. The coax, the splitters, the connectors, the antennas. And so you think like, oh, we're just going to add a band. That may be, easy. It's really not, and it's quite costly. So it depends on the technology.
Okay. Well, and to you, Clint, how does spectrum and capacity demands differ in a stadium?
I'm gonna use Robert's example earlier. Like you said, you had 100,000 people in a stadium. You think about that many people all on their phones trying to stream or look up something at the exact same time. It puts a load on the system compared to outside where everyone's just kind of individually using their phone. So the need is going to differ. The capacity is going to change. It just depends. It really depends on the user and those data needs.
And Jessica, how do you plan for expansion when you're going into the parking lot or the outdoor experiences now, right? You can't just have a stadium where everybody goes inside. It's everything that happens, say, for Mercedes and, the SEC football teams that come. That's aside from NFL's big. But, you've got all those experiences at Mercedes, for instance. So how do you plan for that with venues?
Yeah, I think Robert said it earlier that they're going to be complementary technologies. So you're going to have whatever the indoor solution is, talking also to the outside, because you've got all these ingress and egress areas. Everything's mobile ticketing now. Your phone has to work so that you can get in somewhere. So that has to be covered. So that's part of the design. And then at some point, that's talking to either the macro network or the small cells in the area if you're somewhere like downtown Atlanta or what will be Nissan Stadium. So you've got to have all of those components working to cover the outside areas, the inside areas, and then the right-of-way that's covered by the macros.
Oh, that reminds me, I had tickets on my phone. I'm trying to get into Mercedes. The security's extra tight, so everybody has to go in at the same time, and I cannot download the tickets. And I've got my husband sitting there because, you know, I have the mobile tickets. And you're like, okay, it's not going fast enough. And so, yeah, now you put them in your wallet. But
Yeah, and it's really bad if a stadium or venue doesn't think about that till after the fact, because then we have to go in and rip out walls and that kind of thing.
Right.
So nobody wants that. So if you're doing any planning on any large projects, let us know.
yeah. Okay, so when ODS nears the end of life, carriers want to upgrade to small cells. Why is this, Clint?
Low cost. It's not as complex. You think about a small cell. I mean, even though it's a miniature cell site, but it's more so close to plug and play almost. Versus with an ODAS system, you know, if you literally have to go in there and change out hub equipment, and sometimes that can get a little costly. Versus with a small cell, the deployment is not as complex. CapEx is a little better on that front end as well too. You know, everyone likes low CapEx, so.
Well, and Sam, not your OEM, what advantages does small cell provide instead of ODAS?
Yeah, for outdoor small cell, you can definitely handle more capacity than an ODAS system. And I'll just piggyback what Clint said as far as the simplicity. An outdoor small cell is just a cell tower, but it goes horizontal instead. The BBUs are at the bottom of the tower, radios are on top, and the simplicity factor is huge when deploying them. So you've got your BBU centrally located, and then you just got to get fiber to your radios.
When also, isn't it power? I mean, don't you have more power at the small cell than I think with the ODAS? The power is farther.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was just going to say, small cells, they're more power efficient compared to the ODAS.
Yeah.
And then, you know, as far as maintenance, what a small cell can be just a software upgrade or just replacing the small cell itself just to resolve the issue versus having to get into the venue, depending on where it is, who you got to work with to get in there, to get to the head in the room, and then to get to that space to remove that equipment. That could be also service impacting, so.
All right, we have a few minutes left. To wrap up, I'm going to ask, like, in one sentence, DAS, small cell, or hybrid, what wins the indoor and outdoor venue space? I'll start with you, Robert.
Hybrid.
Hybrid?
Hybrid, yeah.
DAS is all that matters.
Preach.
I'm kidding. That's all. That's what
gonna
we do is
say.
build DAS. But no, it's definitely a hybrid.
Yeah.
We love our DAS, but just depends on everything about it, building morphology, what the use case is, depending on what events, what people are there. So it takes it all.
Hybrid for sure.
Yep.
So.
I agree.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to change this last question. 5 years from now, what do you think you'll be doing in this space?
Robert said we don't have crystal balls, so. No, from the Bolden side, again, we have to do a lot of education today. So we're dealing a lot with commercial real estate developers and that kind of thing. So hopefully in 5 years from now, we're doing less of that. And this kind of cellular solution is thought of more of a utility and a have as they're designing and deploying in buildings.
Still employed. No, I'm just just growing with the technology. Just growing with the technology and growing with the needs of the people that we serve, all of us working together. That's where I want to see myself in 5 years. What that looks like, I don't know. But I just know I still want to be here, and I love doing this, telecom, so, yeah.
All right, Sam?
Running an implementation shop, I would say, and I know we talk about artificial intelligence, so not in like a cliche way, but working with AI tools to do things more efficiently. So if we've got teams of technicians, being able to do, virtual or live trainings for them on how to put a component or a widget on a wall. You good, Robert? All right. Just being more efficient with the business, not using AI as a means to replace a bunch of people by any means, but doing things better and smarter so that we're saving money, we're doing things more cost effectively for our customers, and delivering service.
All right, Robert?
So hopefully the Dolphins will win the Super Bowl in 5 years. Hopefully we'll hopefully.
We got three people from Atlanta up here.
I know. So, but hopefully, designing more venues and designing more, fan experience, and I think technology will continue in that route. It's a wonderful world, technology. We think about when I first started 26 years ago, and I found that phone in my drawer, right? And I picked out that phone and I said, how did we ever live in this time, right? We didn't have Google Maps, we had to print out our maps, right?
That's right.
It's incredible, right? The technology, right? So it's wherever we just ride that wave, right? And wherever technology takes us, that's where we'll go, so.
And I'll add to that, I think we'll be talking about 6G, definitely. It will be being deployed at that time. And what keeps us in this industry is not only the relationships, but I think learning something new and evolving. And so hopefully we'll keep doing the same thing, just making it better. So we've got about a minute left, probably not time for questions, but if anybody has one burning question that you want to ask one of these subject matter experts, just raise your hand. Nope.
Keeping y'all from the bar, so I guess everyone's.
I was going to say, well, thank you so much. And now we have the emerging wireless professionals coming up, so I think be in for a treat. Thank you.